So, Joe, I sense we're already kind of talking theories. So, why don't you, now that you've heard kind of the whole story in the search, what do you think happened?
Um, I don't think it was animal related, so we'll get that out of the way.
Yep.
Um, I think there's two theories. I think there's the less likely scenario where he is running from something, not necessarily a negative way. Maybe like, this guy's a world traveler. He's been over in Africa. Maybe he decided to just, I'm going to go with this is like kind of like the extreme end first. So you have a guy who's gone to these prestigious universities. He's a doctor. He's an associate professor. He's traveled. He does all these. He wrote a book. All these things. There's stories of people like that just deciding, you know what, like life is stressful. I'm going to disappear. I'm going to disappear for a little bit, just change who I am. Kind of like you hear about like the really rich guys who like go and be homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll train hop across the country and just beg for money and food because they're like, it's so stressful sometimes to maintain that type of life. So I think that's a possibility because it was an easy hike. He was well versed in the area, and let's assume that water bottle was his. Like the guy said, he was on the last leg of the journey, and it was an easy part.
Yeah.
So that to me says, if you and I did a quick 1-day trail, but we decided to camp it, I can't see very much of things going wrong because we're not in a rush. We're not strained. We're going to be thinking a lot more clearly than we would on, say, like when I do a 60 miler in 4 days in Glacier, where I barely remember some of those days because it's so strenuous.
Yeah.
That's where it makes me think there might be something else going on. However, I think the more likely scenario is that he was hiking, and yes, he's well versed. Maybe he left the tent to go get water or something, and then a blizzard hits, he's in whiteout, and he can't find his way back to where he was supposed to go. So maybe he set up a base camp and was going to day hike, away from base camp somewhere to do some sightseeing, whatever. He's doing this for enjoyable reasons. So maybe he wants to see something, and then gets cut off in a blizzard from his gear, and then succumbs to the elements. I think that is the most likely scenario.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think while your first theory I think is possible, wanting to
I think it's far-fetched. I think it's possible and far-fetched.
I mean, I guess you can't throw out any theory. I don't think it was animal attack. I think maybe one possible theory is he's so well traveled, experienced at hiking. Maybe he was a little too overconfident, and he was up there and the weather was starting to go south, and he thought, you know what, I'm 3/4 of the way done. I'm just going to push this, through this extra 6-7 hours of the hike. I'll get out of this. I'm on the trail. I'll get, back to where I started and be fine. And I think maybe he potentially overestimated or underestimated how bad the weather was going to get. And he got stuck up on one of those, above the tree line areas in a blizzard where there's absolutely no protection or shelter. Yeah. And a whiteout condition bad enough where you can't see an inch in front of your face. And maybe he got turned around and fell off something. It's very mountainous. It would be very easy to do. Or he wandered so far off the trail that he succumbed to exposure and then got buried by the storm, which is why searchers couldn't find him. I think, that's a possibility. We don't know for sure that water bottle was even his. I think the fact that one of the river crossings was washed out, there's maybe a chance that he tried to cross a river that he shouldn't have and got swept away. That would explain why we never found anything from him. Like he had his backpack on, all his gear, and just got swept away by the river. But yeah, I think obviously the most likely theory is, he either, fell or was swept away or, got disorientated and lost and then, succumbed to frostbite, hypothermia. Because in that case about Michael Napinski, he was snowshoeing and he had all winter gear on, and he got stuck in a blizzard, and he was hanging on to a thread, less than a day later when they found him.
Yeah.
And he had, he was prepared for that kind of condition.
And I think that's actually a great comparison. Like, we have a story of a guy who was in a similar situation that survived, that can tell us about what happened, what it was like, versus just guessing at it.
And he was another local, he had done this a lot before, looking at the pictures of him, he was fit and healthy. And he barely made it. And, he had a lot of serious health conditions that almost took his life even after he was rescued. And that was less than 24 hours stuck in that weather. So we're talking, Sam, the search wasn't even started for 2 days. If the same kind of thing happened to him, we were talking in that other episode, Michael Napinski would have never made it another day.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I think the biggest theory, is exposure. And I'm hoping for the family's sake that when, things start thawing out and melting in the spring, that, someone will find his remains so that they can get some closure on this one. But as we know, a lot of these cases never kind of get resolved. That's all I had, Joe.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it was an unfortunate exposure incident, and I hope that they do find him in the spring so that his family can get closure. I think that's the hardest part for all of these cases, is where they'd never find remains or the body. I can't imagine losing a loved one and not knowing what happened, and not having, the remains to, put to rest and have that closure. So I would say from us, we hope they find him and they can get the closure